May I please have everyone's attention? Before the meeting began, we asked everyone at this time to please silence your cell phones. The Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustee meeting is an open meeting for the public to observe the board conducting district business. Therefore, patrons may only address the board during the designated audience item section on the agenda. If you have printed material you want to give to the board members, you must provide them to the board secretary, Gary, Rozier, or to me, and we will provide them to the board. We also ask that members of the audience be respectful of others and remain quiet during the meeting so that everyone is able to hear the proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, officer. The time is 6 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum and the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the silent invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing for the silent invocation. You may be seated. First on our agenda this evening are recognitions, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, sir. If the board would join me on the floor in front of the dais, we will shake hands with some talented students and staff.
President Burdine, Dr. Dupree, and members of the board, I would like to introduce two outstanding students this evening from Scanlon Oaks Elementary. Can I please have Ryan Reckers and Allison Spencer, fifth graders, come forward and shake hands? They led us in our pledges this evening. I'd like to share that Ryan and Allison were both chosen for their excellent leadership qualities and reliability, and we appreciate them coming out this evening demonstrating those leadership skills. Thank you. We're going to do a quick photo. Parents, if you'd like to take a photo, you can do so as well. Thank you so much, Scanlon Oaks. Good job. The next group we have this evening is the Rich Point High School Theater Department, and this department was selected as one of two school theater groups to perform on the Texas main stage at the 2019 annual Texas Thespian Festival. The students performed their musical, Urinetown, and the music is under the direction of Brooke Arwand, head theater director, Jason Quash, assistant theater director, and we've got an outstanding group of students this evening. I'm going to call you in, students, if you'll come forward. Representing the Ridge Point High School Thespian Troupe, we have James Cardwell, president. Next, Ashley Fontenot, vice president. Maddie Marlowe, secretary. Talia Hammerman, sophomore class rep. Joshua Floriano, junior class rep. Jessica Bracker, freshman class rep. And Sean Brackner, senior cast member. And if we could have the staff from Ridge Point join us for a group picture, that would be great. Oh, very good. We have one. Yes.
Don't leave, yay.
Congratulations to Ridge Point High School Theater Department. And that concludes our recognition this evening.
All right. Next on the agenda are audience items. First up, Angie Hannon. Thank you for being here this evening. Each member that signed up has 3 minutes to speak, and Mr. Rosenthal will keep time, and he'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Board President Burdine, members of the board, Dr. Dupree. My name is Angie Hannon, and my family lives in the Dulles attendance zone. My daughter will graduate with the class of 2024, along with some of her beautiful classmates that are here tonight. I'm here tonight to address the proposed changes to class ranking and accountability. I'll use the two campuses that relate specifically to my daughter, but please know my concerns span district-wide for all academies and schools of choice. I am hoping the district seeks further clarification from TEA regarding this issue. Under your proposal, Quail Valley Middle School, where almost half of the school's population is there on an inter-district transfer, will be impacted. Quail Valley currently holds an A rating with the state, while the two elementaries that feed into it are rated B and C. By removing the GT students from the ratings, you misrepresent half of the school's achievement and disrespect the teachers who teach the children attending at the academy. Can you imagine how teachers felt to be told their efforts would not be beneficial to the school where they teach? How do you think this will impact teacher morale, teacher evaluation, and campus accountability, and ultimately the GTA enrollment? As for high school academies, my husband and I strongly believe that students who attend high school at Dulles, they're taught by Dulles teachers and who work day in and day out for 4 years with their peers at Dulles should be ranked against those peers. The idea of ranking students against a cohort of students from another campus is disrespectful to the children as learners. Furthermore, we believe that students who attend academies bring academic value to the campus and should be appreciated for elevating the level of achievement at those schools. I'm of the opinion that if my daughter back here wants to be in the top 10% at her school, which is Dulles, then she may have to work a little bit harder. If the issue is that we have the top 10% policy at the state level, if that's the real issue, then work with our state legislators to try to figure out how we can remedy that across the state. Please delay the vote on EIC and ED local tonight. I know that there are many other parents that wanted to be here tonight, but because of finals and it's a very busy week, a lot of parents could not be here. You can't pass this policy and say that you will draft regulations later on to iron out the kinks. There just simply is not an iron big enough or hot enough to create procedures that will straighten out what you've proposed in the drafts of EIC and ED. Answer the questions the public you serve has placed in front of you. Questions about valedictorians, salutatorians, commencement, providing ranking to out-of-state colleges and universities, national merit scholarship, PSAT, SAT, teacher evaluation, and so on.
Time is up.
Mr. Rosenthal pointed out at the board workshop video last week that people will think that you're trying to kill academies.
Mrs. Hanan, thank you very much.
And that's exactly what many of us think.
Appreciate you
so
being here
much.
this evening. Please hold your applause. Up next is Judy Day. Thank you for holding your applause.
Kind of short.
Go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Judy Day. I'm here to ask the board not to vote on the new academy students ranking policy. I understand the good intention the district wants to address this problem. Based on the current system, some people view the chances on the top 10 ranking by the local students are damaged by the academy students. However, the new policy will generate many problems for the district and multiple campus. Accountability. How is the state accountability rating going to be assessed? According to the state regulation, a student cannot be counted for at more than one campus. According to the new policy, academy students will be counted for at a zoned school instead of the hosting school where they've been educated. Four-band ISD need to evaluate the total impact to our state rating before making any changes. Four-band ISD has a rule printed in the course selection guide on page 104, stating students need to be in that particular campus for 2 semesters before qualifying for the honor system. 10% is part of the honor system. The new policy waived this requirement for the academy student, so not all students are treated equally. A student got a graduation transcript from a school they have never attended and then send that one to college. Isn't that a fraud? The new policy is based on assumption that all schools in four-band ISD provide students with equal access to course and a comparable grading system. We request the district to prove this statement by providing the following data. First, the correlation data between students' SAT scores and their GPA in the past 3 years. We expect the students across four-band ISD campus with similar SATs will have the similar GPA. Second, the average numbers of AP classes has been taken by a student at their end of the freshman year for the past year. Those data are the starting point to show how equal the education is really are across four-band ISD. We are also concerned about the timing. Why did the district put out such an important policy to vote at this time of the year and in such a rush? This
30
policy
seconds.
affects many campuses in district, but where is the community information session? What happens to the transparency that four-band ISD is so proud of? Is this a policy, is this intentional? Is this a policy targeting certain community? From some of the response the parents received, it looks that way. I'm here to ask the board to be responsible, not to vote, not to try to solve some problems by creating more problems
Time's
on
up.
different campus.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Please hold your applause. Next, Rachel. Ooh. Thank you for being here. Go start when you're ready.
Hi, dear Board of Trustees and Superintendent, good evening. My name is Rachel, and I'm a parent of 4 Settlement Middle School students. My friend told me that the school district plans to change to run the academy students in their Zoom school instead of their attending school. I want to point out that this proposal has one big issue. What high school diploma should these students get? If the school district grants them the Zoom school diploma, then the college admission officer would make assessment based on the profile of their Zoom school. However, they receive 0 education from their Zoom school. The college admission officer might make the wrong decision based on the wrong high school profile. In addition, providing transcript from one school that the student has never been to might be fault for college application. Furthermore, the valedictorian award of one high school might be granted to a student who doesn't study in that school, which makes the students and teachers feel unfair. On the other hand, if the district grants the attending school diploma to the academy students, the college admission officer will think their ranking is from their attending school, which is wrong. It is also possible that one school has more than one first-place student because of the academy program. The college admission officer might think the ranking system in four-band is so confused. In order to solve this issue, I would propose to rank all academic students together and grant them special academy diplomas. We have successful examples from other school districts. For example, Dallas School District and Houston School District put all academic programs together in one school and ran them together. I know that we might not have such a facility in Fallbank to host all academy programs together. But Dr. Dupree clearly stated in his email, policies and systems in Fallbank ISD are designed to provide all students a guaranteed, consistent access to the programs and curriculums, regardless of which school they attend. If this statement is true, there should be nothing prevent the Fallbank ISD from taking this approach now. Please consider this a more popular and less confused ranking option. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please hold your applause. Deepa Vaidyaneth, if you could say that for me, just so I know in the future.
It's Vaidyaneth. Just say Vaidyaneth real fast.
All right.
Good evening, President Burdine, members of the board, Dr. Dupree. My name is Deepa Vaidyaneth, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. At the outset, I wish to thank each and every one of you for your service by serving on this board. I do believe that the community really appreciates the service. You perform an important job. I have some comments about academic achievement and class ranking, which on today's agenda appears as item 10A2C. Recently, Superintendent Dupree, in his monthly video to the community, checking in with Charles, informed us that there is a proposed change to the recognition of academic achievement and class ranking of students starting the class of 2024. Per this proposed change, students attending a program of choice at an academy shall be ranked with the students at the high school within the attendance boundary in which they reside. This is a very important change. I understand that one of the reasons why this change was proposed was to remedy current inequities in the system which stack the deck against high school students who are non-academy students at high schools that host the academies. So this proposed system will allow the top 10% of non-academy students at academy high schools to have equal access to the automatic admission at state universities. I believe that FBISD drafts its policies to provide all students an equitable chance to fulfill their potential. However, I also believe that this proposed change will not correct the problem. It will actually confound it for the following reasons. I have 3 reasons. The first, traditionally, students at academies have access to taking more AP courses than their non-academy counterparts. So thus, they will end up ranking, if they are ranked at the traditional, the campus that their home is zoned to, they will definitely end up ranking higher than their counterparts who don't attend academy. Second, the proposed system does not allow for differences in the environment. How do they account for things such as student competitiveness, the pace of classes, the manner in which students interact? But my most important point is that the system does not take into account the identities of the academy students that will be expressed most significantly at graduation. This new system, for example, makes it possible for a high school to have a valedictorian. This is just an example. But a high school can have a valedictorian that never attended or took exams at that campus. And can you imagine what would happen at graduation? You'd have the academy students finding themselves in the unenviable position that they have been rooting for their academy colors for 4 years.
30 seconds.
And then they will attend graduation at at a campus wearing colors of their traditional rivals. So thus, this new system, instead of correcting the inequity, is just transferring the inequity. And in order to figure out what would be most equitable to all students, we don't want to stack the deck against any one group, but to find out what is equitable for all students, we need more time. And so my request is that you please defer your vote and grant the community more time to deliberate upon this.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you being here tonight. Next on our agenda is closed session. We're going to move that to the end of our agenda this evening. We're going to move right on along to the board member reports. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. This month, board members have been busy as usual, visiting Oakland Elementary Literacy Week, Academic Excellence Awards, Leadership 101 Session 3, James Reese CTE Center Tour, Share Dreams Volunteer Project, Gifts of Love Holiday Family Event at Sugarland Baptist Church, Houston Touchdown Club Award Ceremony, Progressive High School Annual Winter Symposium, Regular Business Meeting, Policy Committee Meetings, SHAC Meeting, Lakeview Elementary Spelling Bee, Kempner High School Academic Excellence, Marshall High School Football Playoffs.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Next on the agenda are special reports. Do we have any special reports this evening? Hearing none, may I have a motion for our consent agenda?
Mr. Burdine, I'd like to pull item 10A to C from the consent agenda.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Radine, I move to approve the consent agenda in its entirety with the exception of item 10A to C.
A second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mrs. Haliger. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 10A2C.
Mr. President, I move to approve agenda item 10A2C as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have discussion, Mr. Rosenthal? Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Dupree.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. I've actually prepared a few comments, and especially in light of some of the community feedback we received at tonight's meeting. I shared this with the board earlier, but I thought it would be beneficial for the community to hear some of what I have to say about this as well. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm proud of the policies that our policy committee has worked with the staff to develop to bring forward this evening, because I think they show Fort Bend ISD as a leader among public education systems in Texas and our nation. There's two things that we have been wanting to do for a very long time, and I feel like these policies do them in a way that honors the integrity of our system and the needs of our students. First of all, the elimination of the class rank, which is a major element of this policy, except, of course, other than the required top 10%. We believe that's important because as our board has so dedicated themselves and this organization to the profile of a graduate, we want our students to be developed as whole children, not simply young people who are competing for the top of their class. And that is happening in many of our schools today. We want our students, everything we do, to be focused on the whole child, and we want them to learn to be lifelong learners. We want them to compete against themselves and challenge themselves to get the best education they can, whether that results in a number 1 rank or a number 50 rank or a number 150 rank. If they're doing their best to study the things, then master the things that are important to them to get a quality education for their future, that's what we're looking for in Fort Bend ISD. The second issue does have to do with how we're ranking students and their cohort groups. The issue of academy class rank has been a concern to some community members and to this board for at least 6 years. For the class of 2018, 80% of the top 10% at Hightower High School were academy students zoned to other high schools. What that means is at least 33 kids who were zoned to Hightower did not get an opportunity for automatic admission in their own zoned high school. And that's important. For the class of 2019, Over 50% of the top 10% at Dulles and Hightower were Academy students, again, from outside of the boundary. The percentage has fluctuated from year to year, but Academy students have consistently earned the majority of the top 10% spots at these schools. Over the years, we've evaluated a number of options for resolving this issue and determined that ranking Academy students against other students from their zoned high school is the best solution. The solution best honors the intent of the top 10% rule, which is designed to provide equitable access for students from diverse backgrounds and diverse communities. The Texas Education Code and Texas Administrative Code does not specifically set forth how to determine a student's high school. This allows the local board to make that determination based on enrollment. In this case, a student's high school would be their zoned campus. This change effectively makes our academies a program of choice students attend while enrolled at their zone campus, and that choosing a program of choice comes with consequences. It means they would be ranked against students from their home campus and go back there for accountability as well. We are already doing this in Fort Bend ISD at Progressive High School, where students are dual enrolled. They attend Progressive. Their accountability, their class rank, and their academic achievement record are all tied to their zone campus. So this change is it's already happening in Fort Bend. It's also happening in other Texas districts with magnet and academy programs comparable to Fort Bend ISD. The district can determine locally what school or academy information will be reflected on the diploma. And that's important because as we build all of the procedures around this, we may ultimately develop a different type of diploma for academy students. We don't have all the definitive answers to that right now. We evaluated the possibility of ranking all academy students against other academy students, but determined that there are issues in the Texas Education Code that do not support this. The Texas Education Code specifically prohibits us from ranking academy students in a magnet program as a subgroup of the high school from which they are graduating if the program was created after the 2000-2001 school year. There are several other elements that we would have to meet as well, but we don't meet the requirement to do that, to rank academy kids as a group at their high school. We are considered creating two separate academy high schools with their own teams, their own standalone school in which all academy students would be enrolled, but they would still attend the various high schools as they do today. This solution creates a much smaller cohort of students and thereby a smaller top 10% cohort, limiting opportunities for academy students to earn automatic admission. Academy students could also potentially be triple enrolled, which is problematic, zoned to one school, attending another school, and graduating from a third academy high school. We believe this creates multiple issues and challenges. I also want to reinforce, based on some of the emails we've received, that the recommendations included in ED and EIC have been vetted through TEA resources to ensure that they are allowable. So if the policies are approved, our next step will be to develop administrative procedures to implement the policy changes. During this phase, we will consider ways to best address the possibility that a valedictorian or salutatorian from one school might be attending an academy program. We'll also consider how to best address UIL extracurricular participation and the logistics of how to handle graduations. We will consider best practices from other districts and create our own unique Fort Bend ISD way that best serves the needs of our community and our students. I want to express also that we have followed the usual protocols to gather feedback from parents and students before developing a recommendation. This has not been done in isolation. It's been going on for a very long time, including focus groups with academy and non-academy parents, with students from the academies, and we've gotten their feedback as we formed this opinion. The committee has done their work to vet the recommended changes. And as a policy issue, we would not typically seek broad community feedback on changes of this nature. But we do, as we did in this case, provide communication and transparency to the community to let them know that the change is being considered. And I can see that that's effective because we do have some parents here and we've received emails, we've received feedback about this from the community, some opposed and some in support. So that's always our goal. Since these changes would be effective with the class of 2024, the most important issue is that we do not want to admit new academy students for next year until we consider this policy change. This will allow them to accept or reject an academy spot with full understanding of how they will be ranked when they graduate in 2024. In closing, what I want to say is I just believe, and I'm even more convicted today than I was 2 weeks ago, that this is the right time to resolve this issue. For at least my 7 years as leading this district, we have worked hard to implement policies, systems, and procedures to provide all students guaranteed, consistent access to programs and curriculum, regardless of which school they attend. This is why we believe the proposed changes are more fair to all. It's our expectation that students would receive the same opportunity to succeed and the same quality education in any classroom. We offer universal course selection. The profile of a graduate drives what we're doing in our schools, and we're focused on community-based accountability, not state accountability and A through F grading. We're also focused on personalized learning and students being responsible for their education. Second, historically, we know that academy programs have historically masked lower performance of zoned enrollment. That came up tonight. Under steady leadership, we have seen achievement growth in all of our schools and believe each school is now able to stand on their own as it should be. It doesn't mean that a school might go from an A to a B or a B to a C during this transition as we change that, but we believe that's important to allow us to have all the information we need to truly make sure all students are receiving the education we want them to receive in Fort Bend ISD. So with that, Board, I just want you to know I appreciate your full consider of this recommendation, and I'll give it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Charles, for reading that. I think that was an excellent summary of what we're trying to accomplish here and have been for 6-7 years now. So I'd like to just start and discuss this policy coming from something that was stated up here many years ago by Board Member Susan Hohenbaum. She said, perception is reality. And that's basically the core of this entire, or most of the arguments against moving forward with this. Many people, those dissenting on this, they have a perception that other schools are not as rigorous as schools such as Clements High School. And that's their reality, because that's their perception. And you can't deny that that is the reality. But it's important to understand, it's important to understand that perception is real. It is real, and I understand that. I appreciate that. I'm somebody that I don't share that perception, and so that my reality is different. So I have read all the emails. I've listened to people. I've met with a couple folks on Friday. And again, in my meeting, it was clear that most of the concern was about that perception of lower standards and rigor, and I get that. We discussed ideas, solutions, and data that could possibly allay the fears and try to remove these perceptions. Again, I personally don't necessarily share those concerns. That's not my perception, but Dr. Dupree and I did discuss doing types of data monitoring going forward in the future, and that could be helpful. We also discussed, again, the issue of ranking academies against themselves, and I'm convinced that's not the way to go, even if we could do it right now. A lot of the emails seem to indicate, or I don't want to use the word allege, but propose that teachers could try to kind of game the system and help their own academy kids so that when they go back to their own schools that they would be ranked higher. And quite honestly, I think that our teachers and administrators are people with high ethical standards and would not be inclined to do such a thing. Of course, they wouldn't have the others' GPA data anyway, so how would they know how high to? It doesn't make sense to me. Again, I understand there's that fear, but that's not my reality. I believe our teachers are the hardest working people in this county, and they are more concerned with providing all our students with the best education that they can. I think high-performing students, which are typically found in those academy programs, at all campuses compete ferociously with their peers for those top spots. I believe that in those honors and AP courses, the ones that those kids are taking, the rigor and competition is tough in all of our schools. The curriculum is standard and monitored. I have personal experience with this with my own daughter, who was involved with that competition at Elkins High School. There were plenty of late nights with schoolwork at Elkins High School. She was in that fight, and I know that there was a lot of competition. And just a personal plug, by the way, my daughter just graduated from Texas A&M on Saturday with 2 majors and 2 minors and a GPA of 3.96. And because of all those AP courses that were offered, she did it in 3.5 years. So to seem to indicate that Elkins is somehow substandard, again, that's not my reality. There have also been many other thoughts put out in the public in the past week. Most of those, if not all, simply weren't true. We heard something tonight about the number of AP courses, that somehow there are more offered at academy schools than at other schools. The data doesn't support that. I could go on, but I think we have enough data and input to make the decision, and I believe this is the best for all Fort Bend ISD students. We have discussed this for many, many years, as I said in the beginning. Students entering high school next year will know the rules and make the decision if the academy programs for their content provide value to them on an individual basis. I believe, again, this is the right decision, and I'm prepared to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mrs. Towson?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. I just wanted to add a couple of things. I too have read all of the emails. I know a lot of you sitting out there. I know a lot of you who have emailed. And I think you guys know who we are as a board, and you know who I am and how I make decisions. So I had some similar concerns as I thought through this, but as Dr. Dupree said, we started talking about this when I first got on the board in 2014. It's been 6 years. We've been openly talking about it at board meetings. We talk about it at workshops. We've been openly talking about it for 6 years. When I was the board president, I asked for a study. Most of you have probably heard me say in here that I favored an academy school. I favored one school that put all the academies together in one building. I have said that in the past. But one of the things I learned when I was the board president is that the law does not allow us to rank the academy kids together in one school. It just doesn't allow it. It doesn't allow it. So, because that was one of the first things that I asked about, was if we could do that. I share some concerns about where kids are going to attend electives and valedictorian and salutatorian, and Dr. Dupree can tell you I've spoken with him at length about it, because I want to make sure that just as we're providing fairness for academy students, we are also providing fairness for zone students. I have children who compete in fine arts, and I have a little bit of concern about academy students being able to cherry pick where they would like to attend classes. And so I think that those are some things that need to be worked out when we're, as a district, drafting procedures and regulations. So that still needs to be done, but they can't do that until we pass a policy. And the policy is what gives guidance to how things are gonna shake out when procedures are written. My number one, I had two things that were like my decision points on this. Number one, I think academies are important because they provide choice. Anybody who is a pro-school choice person has to like the fact that we provide our students choice, whether it's through the GT Academy, the other academies we have, Progressive High School, Early College High School, P-Tech, the CTE Center. More choice for our kids is good. That's what I believe. And so it's going to create issues when we provide choice. It's just going to. These are the things that we have to work through when we provide that much choice to our students. And I favor that. The more, the better. And I do believe that it is fundamentally unfair for academy students to take a top 10% spot from a zoned student. I believe that it's fundamentally unfair. It in fact, completely is conflicting with the purpose of the top 10% rule. Certain schools house academies because we choose that. The Global Studies Academy was moved from Clements to Travis a few years ago. And that was a district decision. And so I do not believe that students who are zoned to a particular school should be denied an opportunity to be in the top 10% simply because the district chooses to house a program of choice there. I think that's fundamentally unfair. So going off of those 2 points, we've got to come up with a decision. And over the past 6 years, we have discussed it and debated it and studied it and researched it. And we really have got to do something in order to afford the zone students an opportunity to have a spot in the top 10%. I firmly believe that. Just like almost everything I've voted on up here in the past couple of years, this affects my daughter. It affects Allison's kids too. My youngest daughter is going to be, she's class of 2024. I rezoned her in the 7th grade. I've done all kinds of things to her as I sit up here and vote. So I don't want anybody to think that you have board members up here whose kids are not impacted. They are. And it's why I have taken the time to think through the deciding where to take your electives and who's going to be valedictorian and salutatorian and who gets to walk and all of those kinds of things. So I have spent a lot of time not only thinking through it, but actually talking to my daughter about it to get her views on it, and some of her friends. So I've really tried to do my homework. The environment issue, the kind of concern about, you know, kids are taking classes in a different school and it's a different environment, that happens all the time in Fort Bend ISD. My daughter, if you were here last week at the workshop where we talked about this at length, I have one who's in 3 fine arts classes because she has to be in order to be in the top choir. Because of that, she has to take a lot of online classes. A lot of people argue that online's easier. Some people argue that online's harder. We have kids who are in dual credit classes. We have kids that go to the CTE Center. We have kids that go to Progressive High School. We have kids that go to early college. We have kids that go to P-Tech. So our future is about different environments. There are going to be different environments, and there's no way around that. Are some going to be more rigorous than others? Yeah, I think that's the nature of things. I think that simply because we have a concern that we should be addressing anyway is not a good reason to continue to allow some students to take away top 10% spots from those who are zoned to those schools. I don't think it's a good enough reason. We should be working on that anyway. If there are some schools that don't provide enough rigor in the classroom, we should be doing better anyway. Teachers could game the system right now. They could give academy students higher grades right now in the school they're in to get top 10%. So that argument doesn't resonate with me. I think teachers who will do that, we should be weeding them out anyway. I don't think it's a good excuse to say we're gonna have bad actors. We need to deal with the bad actors. Not just say, well, because some are gonna do it. We don't want those kinds of teachers in Fort Bend ISD, and we've said that a lot here too. So, you know, saying that schools that these students, academy students, should be appreciated for elevating the level of achievement at the school. I'm a little bit offended by that. I'm a little bit offended by that because we have kids in schools that people perceive, as Mr. Rosenthal said, are not high achievers or achievers at all. And I promise you, they work just as hard as your kids and my kids. They have a lot of circumstances going on that maybe not everyone in this community sees like we get to see because we go in those schools and visit with those kids. And I just want us to be careful. I want us to be careful because every student in this district matters. And that's the whole point, is that we are taking opportunity away from those kids. And as long as Texas has the top 10% rule, that's the way it's going to be, whether you love it or hate it. And that's an argument for our legislators. But that's the reality that we live in. And I don't want to disparage students in this district who work really hard. And they should be given those opportunities. I don't like the suggestion that the district would be perpetrating a fraud. I think that word was used. Look, TEA, if you haven't been watching HISD, they watch very closely things that go on. And we have worked really hard, I know when I was the board president, to see what we can and can't do in dealing with this issue. And whatever we do, it's going to be above board because that's who this board is. And I think you guys know that we're going to make sure that it's legal and that we do everything we can to follow the rules under which we serve. The last thing I'll say is I've had some people express concern about the elimination of class rank lower than the top 10%. And if you guys watched or attended last week, you would have heard me express a desire to ensure that we do not eliminate competition, that we continue to drive our kids to be the best. And it's, like Dr. Dupree said, it's competing with yourself, but it's also competing with your peers, and it's competing with those. That's what they're going to encounter in the workforce, and we have to ensure that they stay competitive. So we did talk about that last week, and I'm not concerned about not providing the ranking, because anybody can ask and we can give it to you. If a college needs it, we'll give it to you. We press a button and we can still rank students. It doesn't do away with honor graduates with summa or magna or cum laude. It doesn't do away with honor cords. It doesn't do away with your GPA and your SAT and your ACT and all the things you have to get into college. It just means that beyond the top 10%, you're not going to be waiting for those rankings to come out like we are now. I have a senior. We wait for it. But if you need it, which mine did for an out-of-state college, then it can be provided. And so I don't think that it's harming kids to not publish those every semester like we are doing now. So with that, I'll say, I've put a lot of thought and a lot of research, and it's not just been in the past 2 weeks. And I would support the policy as written.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Dr. Dupree, we heard a couple things tonight. I just wanted to get some additional input from you, such as where will a diploma come from, and the idea of if you're the valedictorian who never attended that school, I know you said there still needs to be some time to develop that. Can you tell us when that might be forthcoming?
Yes, sir. Our typical process is once the board approves a policy, within about the next, I guess, couple of months, really, we develop the procedures, which are then very publicly faced for the community and for the board to see.
So next spring,
Yes, by the end of the school year.
and am I to assume that staff's already working on that in a preliminary way?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. I want to thank staff, and I'd like to thank our fellow board members. This is not an easy decision, and as Mrs. Tolson has stated, I know all of us have put lots of thought and consideration and research into this, and I wanted to also thank our policy team for your hard work on this as well. I'm not going to sit here and belabor this conversation, but there's something that Mrs. Tolson said that was very powerful to me, and that is every student in this district matters. And I think that sums it up right there. So please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to reviewing our future board meeting agenda items, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, sir. As you know, this is the last week before winter break, and I did not realize until today that the district is closed Friday of this week, but it is. So there you go. So, but when we come back in January, and we're gonna have lots of good stuff for you, we're gonna be working on 2021.
Hold on, Dr. Dupree. We have some people that are being rude here.
So when we return in January, we're going to get busy looking at the 2021 budget overview and propose new instructional programming for the 2021 school year. We're also going to provide the annual TAPER public hearing. That's our annual report. That's on accountability from all levels, as well as Bond Oversight Committee update. We're going to be looking at the district calendar for the 2021 school year, along with several other items. Then coming up in February, we'll be doing the annual enrollment review and demographic projections. This is our typical routine for the February. So we're going to be getting into the planning for the next year once we get back from the break.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. We will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meeting Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subject matters authorized by law. We are now convened in closed session.